Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Ryan.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm feeling very, very delicious. I'm feeling sinister. I'm feeling evil, Rachel. How are you feeling? You're not feeling weak, are you? You're not someone with compassion in your heart, are you?
No.
Oh, good, then I can trust you. You're an evil person like me. There, it's all good. So, Rachel, we're the YumYumPodcast because of the iconic line of dialogue, Yum Yum. Remember that line from Star Trek Discovery?
How could I ever forget when you bring it up every week?
How could you forget? Do you remember who said it?
Commander Nan.
No. Commander Nan D. Remember, we learned her full name. The D stands for something, I don't know. But
Well, I was giving her the respect of her title.
You're right. Commander. Remember when she was an engineer? And that she never did any engineering?
Well, everybody's got an engineering background.
That's a fair point. Does anyone in Star Trek Discovery not have an engineering background? That would be something to discuss. So we are Star Trek Discovery Rewatch Podcast. We are rewatching episodes of Star Trek Discovery and giving our thoughts on them one episode at a time. Star Trek Discovery is one of those shows where it's jam-packed. It wants you to look at all the details. It wants you to rewatch it. And your opinions of it may change once the full season is over, once the big mystery box has been opened. And we are looking at season 3, Rachel.
But it's not just us two.
No, we are not alone for this. We had on last episode some guests from the Starfleet Underground podcast. We had them on, and we have their other hosts on for this episode. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hey.
I'm loving the mirror thing of this episode. This is wonderful. These leather shorts look really good on me.
Oh, yeah. And Rachel,
and my full beard has just become a goatee, so I'm like looking really, really hot right now.
Yeah, and I'm in my little dominatrix outfit.
Right? That chest hair? I mean, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I don't normally have chest hair like this. This is pretty sexy.
Feathered cape for me.
Oh, yeah, feathered cape for Rachel there. So, tell us about yourselves, who you guys are, and your show.
Hi, I'm Heather Ferris. I am the science officer of the USS Butler. We do the podcast Starfleet Underground. And Rocky.
I'm Rocky, the engineer of the show and the ship for Starfleet Underground, and we have been known to have tribbles.
And they're so troublesome. So, with Starfleet Underground, you guys obviously are a Star Trek podcast, but what kind of Star Trek do you guys discuss? Are you focusing on anything in particular? Are you kind of just all over the board? What is Starfleet Underground?
The kind that's not meant for kids. Do not let kids watch our podcast. Do not let them listen to our podcast. Don't let them come anywhere near our podcast. No
Let
kids.
them watch Star Trek all you want. Star Trek is great for kids, but don't let them hear our podcast because we take it a little adult themed sometimes.
Sometimes
we have a little fun with it.
Did I mention the tribbles? Yeah, they're pretty nasty.
Oh, yeah.
They like the ball gags too.
So, you guys, at the moment, from my understanding, are talking about Star Trek Enterprise, the most kid-friendly show of Star Trek, might I add.
It's got lots of jelly.
Oh, yeah, you gotta love that jelly. You gotta love the jelly.
Yeah.
You gotta love the tight outfits. Rick does. So you guys are focusing on that, but from my understanding of discussion with your other hosts, you guys also talk about the modern iterations of Star Trek. Obviously, there is none happening right now, so you guys are focusing on what was previously the latest series of Star Trek, Enterprise.
It wasn't the latest series was the reason why they wanted to listen to it. They wanted to torture me. Okay, they wanted to what is the one series, season, whatever, that we could use to totally torture Heather. Let's do it.
My motivation wasn't to torture Heather purely. Maybe a little bit,
was
but
totally
because it is mirror time, right?
100%.
Yeah, okay. It was all about torturing Heather because we're mirror mode right now. But no, we watched Picard, and that was awesome. And we're watching Discovery. Discovery is pretty cool. New Star Trek is a lot of fun. And then, gosh, Lower Decks hit us, and Lower Decks is wonderful.
So much fun.
And then we hit this lull because of, between COVID and schedules, it's like, where's the Star Trek? There's no new Star Trek. Let's watch some old Star Trek. And it just so happened that I was watching through all the series over the last couple of years, and it's been years since I actually got back to Enterprise. Enterprise was the one that actually started my big rewatch of like the 2000s or whatever year it is now, 2020. So that's the one I picked. I said Enterprise should be pretty fun to watch. What do you guys think? And the other guy said, yeah, sure. And Heather said, no. And I made her do it anyway.
No.
I don't associate the words fun and Enterprise in the same sentence.
Tradition says that whatever belonged to the previous captain is yours for the taking.
I've never been one to argue with tradition.
So let's get into our discussion. We are covering Terra Firma Part 2, so as we said, this is a rewatch. If people have not watched Season 3 of Discovery, we will be talking spoilers about it because this is a part of the rewatch, picking up all these little details, seeing how those seeds were planted and seeing how they grow over the course of the episodes. So, Rocky, could you please tell us what IMDb has to say about this episode?
Okay, Georgiou uncovers the true depths of the plot against her, leading her to a revelation about how deeply her time on the USS Discovery truly changed her.
Wow. Pretty short and to the point, and I will say it is an apt description of the episode. Rachel, when we watched this episode originally, we watched it back to back with the first part. We weren't going week by week. We let some episodes just bleed out and watch them in chunks. So, what is your recollection about this episode? How did you feel about it the first time, and how do you feel about it now?
I remembered finding it generally boring because it had no particular stakes for me, because I knew in my heart
She was going to be fine.
she was going to be fine, and that she was going to get sent back so she could do the Section 31 show.
Right. I remembered enjoying this a lot more than the first part on the original watch.
I remembered despising the third act.
Of this episode?
Yeah, of this episode.
I'm not a big fan of the final scene of this episode, but I remember when I first watched it, I liked it a lot more than the first part because, look, I'm a sucker. I enjoy the mirror universe. I enjoyed spending time in it again and running around and having fun and seeing characters that we didn't get to see the first time, their mirrorverse counterparts, and actually getting to see Georgiou as a more fully formed character without her having to do action and quips all the time. That was my first time viewing it. Weirdly enough, when discussing these parts, I've kind of flipped. I think I enjoyed the first part a lot more, and this second part, I felt myself a little aimless throughout it and still thinking to myself my biggest critique, which is I don't think this needed to be a double act story. I don't think this needed to be two parts. I think you could have done this all in one part. Thus, my enjoyment for this episode withered on the rewatch because as fun as it is to be in the mirror universe, I've been there lots of times before, not just in Discovery, but in Deep Space Nine and Enterprise and so on and so forth. So the mystique of the mirror universe kind of rubbed off on me this time around. I was just like, okay, I know, it's cool, but this could have been one part. Heather, how did you feel about this episode on the first watching, and how does it hold up?
It gave me chills and goosebumps, and I was like, oh my god, this is so freaking awesome. And I love this. I really, really love this. This was one of the top 3 episodes in this season, and I love Georgiou, and I love that they brought the Guardian of Forever back, and when the gate broke apart and came back together, I just literally had goosebumps, and I just love this.
Nice. What about you, Rocky? How did you feel about Terra Firma Part 2 initially, and how does it hold up for you?
Well, interesting. I loved it the first time around. The first time around was amazing. And the first part of it was as well, because they had this secret mirror universe thing. Nobody was expecting mirror universe again. That was the biggest surprise. And it was just like, no, not even a hint of it. They just laid it right on you. Boom, she's in the mirror universe. I'm like, oh my God, which was amazing. And I will admit to rewatching the first part again, too, just to get into the second part again. And the second part was, I can detect the slowness of it that you guys are describing, because it was a little bit differently paced, but I have to admit, seeing the other characters, the other crew members doing things in this episode, and the battles going on, and the cutthroatness of it all. That was awesome.
Yeah. I think what holds up for me on this rewatch is, although I still think this didn't need to be 2 parts, what I liked about this as an episode of Discovery, and I wish it did it more often, is it was so focused on this story. It didn't need to feel like how a lot of modern TV shows does, which Discovery does do, and Game of Thrones did do, and so on and so forth, where you have quick 30-second scenes, and then you're pinged to plot B, and then pinged to plot D, and then pinged back to A, and then to C. It was nice to just follow this story. Although I'm not the biggest fan of Giorgio as a character, although it wasn't my favorite story in the season, it was nice to actually have an episode be what I feel is just supremely focused on a story.
It felt settled, and it felt like it really knew what it wanted to do.
Yeah, and it didn't feel like, although there was chaotic things happening within her story, it didn't feel like I was overloaded with adrenaline watching it like I am with other episodes in which you're just rushing around from scene to scene to scene to scene to scene to scene. It was nice to just sit, stew in the world of the Mirror universe, to stew with characters like Giorgio, like the Mirror Michael, like even the Mirror Detmer. It was nice to just kind of sit and kind of just experiencing it fold out where it just does hit the beats without having to ping back to Admiral Vance, to ping back to this story and this story. And I like that aspect of this episode.
I did feel like the action was well paced within it as well.
Yeah. It didn't feel like it was relying on the action as much as previous episodes. It felt like when there was action, it made sense.
Rather than we've hit this page mark in the script and we need an action scene here.
Yeah. So I enjoy that about this. I wish Discovery would have more episodes like this in that particular regard, of just having it not be afraid to not have so many other subplots going on. I get it, it's a big serialized show, but even within these type of shows, these episodes are spread throughout them, and those are usually considered the best episodes of these modern prestige shows, because it's just nice to focus in, sit down, and watch the story unfold without having to think about all the subplots going on.
She will not return.
Never.
This episode got off on the wrong foot for me when I initially watched it, and on this watching, I was disappointed in terms of the alternative opening credit sequence. I don't know about you guys, but I found it pretty cheap and lackluster that all they did was flip some things upside down and put the invert button on.
The editor hit 2 buttons. They said, click upside down, click invert. Done. Next. What? You want me to do something else? I mean, I got time. Oh, no, we got to edit this other scene. That's fine. They could have done so much more. When Enterprise visited the Mirror World, they made a whole damn different montage with different music and everything.
Yeah, so, that made sense with its own show. Like, if you know the Star Trek Enterprise opening theme, you see the mirror version of that, and it's a perfect encapsulation of the opposite of that intro credit sequence, whilst also still being entertaining and genuinely good on its own. Like I'm not a huge fan of Enterprise, but I've sat down and watched the opening sequence for the Mirrorverse just on its own because it's just good on its own, as well as being a juxtaposition to Enterprise's one.
I am so sorry you had to waste your time.
Heather is not really a hater. She's just playing.
Enterprise is the only one I have negative feelings about.
Have you seen I can't remember how much, if you've seen it all.
She hasn't seen the Mirror Universe part yet.
It's genuinely, I think it's the best thing about the whole entire show.
This is the Starship Defiant. If you don't surrender immediately, we'll begin targeting your cities. Respond.
Where's Archer? Who the hell are you?
You're speaking with Empress Sato.
I was very disappointed because Star Trek Discovery, one of the things that has gotten on my nerves, but also something I appreciate, is it is a flashy show. You even see it in this episode with the throwing the badge sequence on the table. They love to go full hog over the top with showing us how flashy and cool the show is. And they couldn't even do it for the
with
intro.
that crown that she had, my goodness.
Yeah, but they couldn't do
I
it
think
for
that
the
was the
intro.
first part, but yeah,
That
great
was
crown.
such a cool crown.
Yeah, I would have appreciated even, I was saying this to Rachel before we recorded, what could have been even cool is you can keep the intro with the 2 button presses on the editing suite, but what would have been even cool is, playing the theme song in different chords so it sounds a little creepy, or even, lowering the tone of it so it sounds sinister, but it still just sounds like it's just a normal Star Trek Discovery theme, which sounds optimistic and hopeful.
It was certainly a waste of an opportunity that they passed up on that to change it a little bit more than what they did. Totally.
Maybe they just didn't have time.
A few more button clicks and just distort.
They're like, we have to get this out at 4 o'clock. What time is it? 3:59. Okay, 2 buttons. 1, 2, we're done.
But I find it surprising because although I think Star Trek Discovery can be a little lazy, but I find it more in the writing department, I did find it very shocking because you can tell that they really went back to the effort of going back to the Mirrorverse, and the fact that they even did the reverse intro credit sequence showed that they had some interest in putting effort in, but again, not enough for me, and it's a bit of a disappointment. It was very funny to me when they showed one of the phasers or disruptors, and it's just
it was
upside down.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell's going on here? They didn't mean to do that, did they? Something's wrong.
It was a bit silly, and it made me laugh, but not in an ironic way.
Not in a good way. Yeah. The only other thing that bothered me about this episode was we got an opportunity to see Landry again, and they killed her again.
What? She must die every time.
I think that's 3 times now.
Yeah, this episode is a complete waste of super hot women. By the way, not to sound sexist or anything, but all the hot girls got killed like right away. I mean, I'm not comparing to each other, but they're wasting these beautiful women. So if they ever want to visit the mirror universe again,
what are you saying about Tilly then?
What about
I love Tilly too.
Tilly.
No, they didn't get all of them, but I mean, come on, you guys.
Backtracking there heavily, Rocky.
Just like that.
That's all of them?
Yes, Emperor.
No Lorca.
Right. They did not have any Lorca. They teased him a little bit, but they did not bring him in.
No Lorca. Woohoo.
To me, this was a huge missed opportunity.
Oh, no. Keep him away.
No, I like Lorca. Good. He's fun.
Oh, no. He's
because
the worst.
He's bad. He's a bad guy.
He's horrible.
Exactly, and that's fun.
I wanted to see the good Lorca.
We agree, but keep him away.
No, but here's where I come in. And I don't know if you'll agree with this, Rachel, but I think this was the only time... I think this is the only time they could have explained could have actually shown good Lorca.
Yeah.
I think they missed it.
I wanted to see good Lorca too, and I was kind of like, oh, darn.
Because I reckon this could have been such a great entryway point in showing, him transported and something fucked up happened to him or something, I found it a little bit disappointing because, look, I love Jason Isaacs. He was, I know, Heather, you may not be a big fan of his character,
I
but
literally have a Christmas gift on my wall that I'm looking at right now of a dartboard with his picture on it. Thank you, Rocky.
You're welcome. I had to physically restrain Heather at the Star Trek convention because Jason Isaacs was there, and she wanted to kill him for some reason.
I love Jason Isaacs because one of my favorite things about him is whenever movies and shows like Star Trek Discovery try to play it off like he's not a villain, and I'm like, fuck off. I've seen Jason Isaacs in movies before. He's always
totally
a villain. Always.
He's totally a villain, yeah.
I was watching...
Even when he's a good guy, he's a bad guy. When you see him in the Jurassic Park film, it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
He's not he's totally a bad guy, but he's trying...
Even in the real world.
Yeah. I don't know much about him as an actor, but I like him as an actor. I enjoy his performances. He's always good at playing a shitlord. I was watching the OA, and the first episode with him is trying to play it off no, he's a nice man. I'm like, no, he's not. And then the show's like, no, he's not. I'm like, of course he isn't. It's Jason Isaacs. What else is he? Bad man. But I was disappointed. Rachel, what about you? What did you think? The lack of Lorca? Worth it in the end? Don't need to see that shitlord? Or disappointed?
Disappointed.
Why?
Because I like Jason Isaacs, and I would have really enjoyed tying up that loose end of what happened to good Lorca.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where I generally don't think they're ever going to come back to the Prime Lorca, and that the answer was, well, no one can survive, none of our guys can survive in the Mirrorverse on their own, so he must be dead, which is such a lame answer. I would have liked to have actually seen him, just to also see the boldness of Jason Isaacs playing a good version of that character, because he played the evil version. I would have actually liked to seen him stretch his acting muscles and show us what the good version of that bad guy looked like.
Maybe he couldn't have pulled that off. Maybe that's why.
I was thinking the same thing, Rocky.
No.
I like that. I agree with those two.
I know, but I agree too, but I also would have liked to have seen them try. Don't you like when they try and they fail anyway? I would have liked to have seen that. But I remember people were upset there was no Lorca, and I think it's just because I think that's just one of those very loose threads that they technically tied up, but it's one of those ones where you're just not satisfied with it. People still want to see Prime Lorca, and to me this was the story where it could have happened, and I don't think it's ever going to happen. Unless they're going to pull out the trick of the real Cleveland Booker was Prime Lorca out their ass.
Whoa!
And somehow he time traveled.
Forward in times, yeah.
From what you've told us about the Terran Empire, no Starfleet officer could survive that universe alone. So my Gabriel is dead.
Let's talk about the episode and the big crux of it all, which is Giorgio's redemption arc story. Heather, you seem like out of all of us, you're the biggest fan of Giorgio. When we guested on your show, you seemed very disappointed that her Section 31 show seems like it's never going to be made anytime soon. What about this character do you like so much?
How much time do you got?
Give us your cliff notes.
Okay, so I imagine that you could give us an entire thesis on why you like it. So just give us the introduction portion of that thesis.
And I just want to preface it. Heather, I love you so much, but I think we're just going to butt heads because I hate Giorgio so much.
Why?
Well, we can give each other our thesis statements of why we like her and why we hate her. So tell me, because I am curious. I'm so curious to know, because from my end, I find it so bizarre that people love this character so much. What do you love about her?
What other character do you know just brutally tells the truth like that?
In this show or in general?
In Star Trek. Any Star Trek.
What must I do to convince you people?
Die.
I'm talking about Major Kira.
What about her?
She's much too busy trying to save this station to be impressed with your incessant posturing.
Garrick!
And even if she weren't, she has much better taste than to be attracted to you. You, a married man.
What do you think is going to happen here, Ducat? That you're going to wear me down with your charming personality? That I'm going to be swept off my feet by that insincere smile? Are you really so deluded that you actually believe that we're going to have some kind of intimate relationship?
Here's the thing. Okay, so this is how I want you to look at it. Every single series of Star Trek that you see, there is always one character that used to be an enemy, but that is now a part of the Star Trek crew. So that way we get to know that person better. So it's not just black and white. You see the gray involved in it. And I think Giorgio is that character, because what other mirror universe character actually joins the crew and becomes a part of the crew? And I think what they did with her character was just amazing, because they still kept her mirror universe where she was nasty, but you saw the change. You saw her gradually change. And then when they put her back to the mirror universe in this episode, you really, really see the difference. And I think that what they did with her character was just beyond amazing.
Right. What moments to you before these double-parters are the pivotal turning points of her character's change?
You don't see that. It's gradual. That's the best part of it. It's very gradual. I think anything that is pivotal centers around Michael and her love for Michael.
Right. Because, see, I'm on the different ends of this. Obviously, I'm not a huge fan of her character, and I find it very hard to see the moments in which she's changed, especially when I watch these double-parters in which, before she gets in the Mirrorverse, she's your typical Giorgio. She's making quips all the time. She's wanting to fight people. She's being typical thing. And then once she's in the Mirrorverse, it's like, to me, she's a different character, because I can't remember. Did she make any genuine typical Giorgio type jokey quips in this episode? I don't remember any. And I'm so used to her character being the joke character, like the comedy character who says the brutally honest things in a very mirror Terran way. And I think
she said when they were talking at the dinner table, Giorgio was saying, oh, those silly democratic things, they're always on the brink of collapse. There's an example of a quip. while she
Okay,
was
I
in
didn't
the
see
mirror
that one
universe.
as a quip in terms of like an AI sausage. Those are the type of quips I think of her having more so than that kind of line where that felt like what
She wasn't the comical relief in this episode. It was totally focused on her, what she's, her change is basically what she wasn't being funny at all. Yeah.
And that's why I felt like it was such a weird flip for me, because throughout this season, she's been the comedy lady who's like, look, I blink holograms to death. Isn't that cool and funny? And I'm like, no, it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. It raises
that
too
was
many
unusual,
questions.
wasn't it?
I think even fans of season 3 have to agree that's like one of the what the fuck moments where it's like, wait, what? No.
Can you imagine if somebody just blinked out the Doctor and Voyager? Oh my God, that would suck.
You would die. You would literally die. But hey, technology hasn't changed in over 900 years. Whatever. Rocky, what about you? What do you think about Giorgio as a character? What do you love her? Do you hate her? What's your general feelings on her?
I loved her the second the show started. The pure Starfleet Captain Giorgio was awesome, and we lost her right away. And that really surprised me because I thought this is going to be great. She's a good captain, and it's just really, really easy to play the good captain. What is unusual and different is to play the mirror version of it in the regular universe, and I think she did that to a T. And she got the comic relief lines because she could say things no one else would say. She could be brutally honest, even if it was completely wrong. And when they needed somebody to be a badass, she could do it without blinking. She was so good.
But she will blink someone to death, just FYI.
Well, yeah, but beside the blinking to death thing, that was a little silly. I loved the little Western sequence when they went and visited the planet in the saloon, basically. And she got the throwdown in that. That shit was badass.
Yeah. I look, I'm not a huge fan of Giorgio, but to me, I'm not a huge fan of her and Michael together. However, I'm a bigger fan of her and Saru together. And it feels like that bond, those two together, actually culminates quite well in this episode, in which you see her relationship with the slave version of him, because you remember how she was to the slave versions in the original season 1.
They were delicious.
And that is the relationship where I can see what...
Now they're high in cholesterol.
And
stringy. Yeah.
Which is a nice callback to season 1, where Saru's just like, I'm far too unpalatable and stringy. But that I can see where Heather's coming from more with in terms of her gradual change. I see it so strongly with Saru, and I think it's because Saru as a character is also one of those characters in which he's a dynamic character. I was speaking about this last episode with your other hosts, where he's a character where you can point to so easily the moments where he has changed and why he has changed. And I think seeing him and Giorgio play off each other is actually an interesting pairing because they are so different to one another, but they have a weird mutual respect for one another because they're both leaders, or they're both trying to be leaders, or having issues with leadership. She obviously with her crumbling empire, and him obviously figuring out how to be a captain. Especially when you consider also his former captain that he loved so much was the original version of Giorgio, somebody he admired and somebody who saved him from his oppression. And it's interesting to have the juxtaposition of the woman who saved him from his oppression is now replaced with a woman who is the cause of oppression in another universe. That's interesting. So I find that aspect of Giorgio fascinating more so than the quips, more so than the mother-daughter complex of her and Michael. I find that more interesting. So my favorite parts in this second part...
The Fireflies.
The Fireflies, yes, the Fireflies. But my favorite sections of these double-parters was the Saru section, where her and Saru just have these conversations together, the mirror version of him, and it felt like that was really earned to me because I can see how those two characters have bonded, and thus she treats the slave version of him much better than she would have in the past.
Placing a great deal of trust in me.
My corpse would already be eaten to bones if I could not accurately judge between loyalty and flattery. Your regret was genuine when you thought you were leaving me here, as was your pain when your comrade fell.
You're not a fan either. Me and you are united on the not fans of her.
Yeah, Space Hitler.
Space Hitler, we've called her. Mm-hmm. What about her do you like?
I hadn't considered Heather's point of how all of the series bring in somebody who was an enemy and becomes part of the crew. Because we have taken note of how they try and do that in Voyager, and it doesn't really work.
Yeah, they don't follow through on it. They don't follow through on it enough.
I love 7 and 9.
Yeah. Just Chakotay and B'Elanna.
Marquee side of things.
Mm-hmm.
7 works much better, but marquee stuff in the first couple of seasons, not so much.
Because the Borg was the ultimate enemy, and then they brought 7 and 9 in to, humanize the Borg. Well, yeah, sex it up too, but humanize the Borg.
Yeah. I think, is the original series the only one that doesn't kind of follow this rule? Because they're all just on the same page, right?
That was Vulcans.
Oh,
Vulcans, I guess. They're still friends. It's just they're aliens.
No, that's the point of Enterprise, to see how crappy the Vulcans were.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the point of the original series, I guess.
No, but there is that suspicion. Remember, there's that episode of TOS where one of the bridge crew is like, I don't trust him.
Oh, yeah, when they're fighting the Romulans for the first time and there's a racist crew member against Spock, yeah.
Mr. Spock, he pulled me out of the phaser room. Saved my life. He risked his life, and after I
saved a trained navigator so that he could return to duty. I'm capable of no other feelings in such matters.
Why is Giorgio Space Hitler?
Okay.
Uh-oh. I'm going to put my seatbelt on now. Hold on a second. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. No. This is actually really good because, Heather, this is something I'm really keen to talk to someone who's a fan of Giorgio, because to me this is so obvious. But to hear you actually say, how is she Space Hitler, raises so many interesting questions for me. I've discussed this in the first part, so for the listeners, this may be a bit of a repetition, but I'll discuss it anyway. In her universe, she has killed whole species out of racial prejudice. She's eaten others because she thinks they're genetically inferior to her. Do I need to go on? That's very Hitlery.
Yeah. You could do more. Go for it.
Yeah. So she, the whole Mirrorverse is Nazi allegory, obviously.
Well, here's the thing. So I have a couple points on that. My first, and don't wait until I get to the second point. So my first point is, how could she be a Hitler in a world full of Hitlers? It's the mirror universe. Everyone there's
because she's the
Hitler.
emperor.
Wait.
And the orchestrator of genocide.
Second point. Second point. In this episode, the Guardian of Forever said that the whole point of this episode and last episode was to weigh her.
Yes.
Because she doesn't belong in the mirror universe anymore. She doesn't belong with the Hitlers anymore. She doesn't belong in this world, but she doesn't belong with the Hitlers because she's not a Hitler. She's not one of them. And the Guardian of Forever said that.
Yes.
Maybe we should just call her Space Mussolini instead.
Okay, here's where I come from with this. In a narrative like Star Trek Discovery, like Star Trek in general, her level of supreme evil that they started her at is where she got off on the wrong foot for me. And what I mean by that is, we've had characters like her in the show in seasons of yesteryear. She's a Garak type character, right? Where Garak is a bad guy who's done bad things, but he's a quippy guy who says snarky things. But the thing about Garak, in comparison to Giorgio, is his level of evil isn't the point in which he's exterminated whole species. He's just tortured people for information.
However, he did that in this universe. It wasn't like the mirror universe. It was Giorgio was born and raised and brought up in a different universe.
And
so
he was
it's
born
not
and
a
raised
matter
in the
of
Cardassian culture where they approve of his actions.
He was born and raised in not the mirror universe. So compared to the mirror universe, that's actually pretty good. That's like a good, technically a good person. Now, she was brought up in the mirror universe, and I'm quoting her in this episode. She said, I wish there was another language you can understand, but here, strength is power. Here, terror is love. there is just no other way that I can reach you. So it's not a matter of character. It's not her being Hitler.
Yeah.
It's her character in the universe, the mirror universe that she was brought up in and raised in and had to, work her way through. So I don't necessarily agree with you on that point because it's two different universes.
But the thing is, the whole point that these two episodes are bringing up and the show is brought up is the Terran, and DS9 brings this up too, the Terran Empire collapses because that methodology, that ideology, that belief system is fundamentally flawed and it doesn't work.
And again, it's the world full of Hitlers, and the Guardian of Forever said she doesn't belong there.
Just the humans full of Hitlers.
She doesn't belong there, and even the Guardian of Forever said that she's not Hitler.
Oh yeah, but okay, Heather, here's where my issue lays, to just go back a bit. I got off on the wrong foot with Giorgio from the very beginning because they set her up as the big evil emperor of the entire mirror universe. The mirror universe for the humans is directly set up to be an equivalent of Nazi Germany, with the salutes, with the uniforms, with the ideologies that they bestow. So when
they
you
set
have
her up to be an enemy. So that way, when she comes aboard and becomes a crewman, you get that gray. It's not black and white. They want you to think it's black and white, which is why they set it up that way at the very beginning. But then you see that it's not black and white. You see that it's gray, and that's the point of her coming on and being a part of the crew and seeing her as like the character that she is in this universe.
But
so this is how Giorgio acts in this universe compared to how she acted in the mirror universe.
But
so
my issue lays is, can you give a gray and redemption arc to the leader and orchestrator of several genocides? Deep Space Nine said you can't to someone like Gul Dukat.
You could give that to anyone. Deep Space Nine was fantastic because it didn't show the black and white, because it showed the gray, and it showed.
But they still morally condemned fascism. Gul Dukat was still a fascist. Although they humanized him, although they gave him facets and layers, they said constantly, remember, he orchestrated death camps. He was a rapist. He was a criminal. Although he was a dad who had feelings and love, but he was a bad guy.
Is to show that even bad people have gray in them. Even bad people have some good in them. It's not black and white. It's gray, and that's the point of showing enemy coming aboard and being a part of the crew and seeing their character, put in a different situation and how they react. It's gray. It's not black and white.
But that is why I have an issue. My issue comes from, again, the level of evil. With Garak, he wasn't Gul Dukat. If Gul Dukat was a fellow crew member on the show and they just constantly kept bringing up all the genocides he did, I still would find it gross and disgusting, because one of the recurring staples in Star Trek as a brand is fascism is unacceptable. Fascism is bad. Fascism is something we should not condone or forgive.
Fascism is bad. People are not bad.
But people can fall into fascism.
And people can be redeemed. And there are still good in people. That's what it's showing.
The thing, I just can't help but think, this is a woman who has killed more people than any other Star Trek villain we've ever encountered. And I find it weird
Same with Lorca, and you like Lorca.
Lorca was a bad guy, and they punished him.
And you
the show
like Lorca.
said that was bad.
So if someone kills,
Lorca because they didn't
and you keep
try
talking
to make
about
him a good
killing
guy.
and all of that stuff, but yet you like a character who does that.
Because the show doesn't condone him. The show punishes him. The show says that was wrong. The show
like
vilifies him.
Is what I'm saying. But you don't like Giorgio, and yet both of them killed.
Because
killing is not a good. Killing is not a good.
I like it because how about the show frames it? The show frames Lorca as a bad person, so I can enjoy him like a Khan type, where it's like, I recognize that they're a villain. The show, the movies, whatever, recognizes the villainy, recognizes that the fascism is bad.
I thought for a second that any of you were capable of relinquishing this cult-like devotion to the Federation. I'd enlist your skills today.
We are not interested in your sentiments.
We introduced Giorgio as someone who has exterminated whole species because of racial prejudice. Yes, she grew up in the mirror universe, but
that's
the most successful Terran.
You can't have an enemy without the enemy doing bad stuff.
Of course, but is that too much bad stuff? Is that too over the top? What I'm saying is,
She's in the mirror universe.
Yes, and this is also applying to real world context. This is directly...
No, none of this is real world.
No, because it's evoking Nazi imagery. How can you not think of real world context? How can you not think of real world genocides? How can you not think of real world fascism? Lorca, they made real world parallels to him being a Trump type. It does relate, because that's Star Trek, right? They're using sci-fi allegories, they're using these sci-fi characters to relate to the modern world and to make you think. I think when I watch Star Trek, fascism is bad. As someone with a Polish heritage, I also think fascism is bad. When I watch a show where they introduce one of their main characters is the universe's equivalent of Hitler in terms of they are the supreme leader and the architect of genocides, and then they say, don't you want to see this character redeemed? I can't help but think of the real-world context of several dictators who she evokes and thinking, can they be redeemed? Can Hitler be redeemed? Would you buy that? I can't buy that.
Hitler had dogs and had paintings. Hitler was horrible, but again, there's the black and white, and not every person is black and white. There's always some gray, and I think that's what they're trying to show.
Yeah, and that's where we just differ. I think, for me, her being the head architect of oppression, tyranny, and genocide is too big of a pill for me to swallow of redemption. Because yes, there's grays in people, but my issue too is, throughout the show, I wish that they had condemned her actions more often, but more often than not, they said, the show says, her violence is appropriate. It works. Her terror worked more often than it didn't. Season 1, she plants a bomb in the center of Kronos. It wins the war. Although she didn't explode it, the threat of it happening won the war. Second season, she just brutally murders people, and that wins the second season. And that's where it's just like, okay, if you're going to say that stuff is bad, I wish more often than not that they had someone like Saru, which they did every now and then. I wish more often than not they would say, hey, that is wrong, try it this way. But more often than not, the show would say the action set pieces from her were good.
In Discovery Season 3, Episode 2, isn't that exactly what happened in the bar scene? Because Giorgio was going to kill that guy, but Saru stopped her and said, no, this is not who we are. We are not bad people. And they changed her opinion, and they had him banned or whatever. So actually, that's a good example of what you're saying happened.
At the end of it.
Yeah, because she's proven to be right at the end of it, because his diplomacy was going to fail, and they would only react. She
was going to do something bad, and Saru stopped her and told her, this is not who we are. That's the example that I'm trying to use.
Oh, yes. But then here's a weird thing, too. What happens to that character that she gave mercy to? He just gets brutally murdered by Book. So in the end, what difference did it make to spare him?
You asked me for an example.
Oh, yeah.
Where Saru jumped in and told her this is not good, and I'm giving you an example.
And that was my favorite episode of the season, because I wish that was more throughout the show. I'm not saying that there isn't. I'm saying I needed more of that throughout the show. That's what made Garak a far more interesting character, because you had Bashir right in his face, questioning him and challenging his viewpoints. I wish that we had more of that. Instead, you have a eulogy scene in which they say her boots were pretty badass. And I'm like, well, okay, rightio. Interesting viewpoint to have on a character that's been nothing but mean to you throughout the whole show, but that's interesting.
I wish I could have done more.
You tried. And she knew that. Even if she bit your head off every chance she got.
If I had time, I'd poison your children.
She was tough. She was a force to be reckoned with. And she pretty much redefined the word badass.
If it isn't Saru's walking command, blunder. Find a way to kill everyone on board yet?
Oh, and can I just add that she had the best walk. With that coat and those boots. You have some Leland on your shoes.
Somebody had to make sure he was dead.
One of the things that's been interesting is we were watching Season 3 come out while we were doing our show. So we were reviewing and rewatching Season 1 and Season 2. So it was a little bit interesting to be currently watching Discovery and it's revisiting its own self while we were revisiting that point too. How did you feel about it? Did it all work for you?
For the the most part, yeah. Like, but the success of that is based off a decision that I made in my own head rather than the success of the show, which we brought up last episode, I believe, which is that I don't think that it's direct time travel. I think it's a dimension jump, which means that I'm not concerned with the inconsistencies.
In continuity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look at it as, now that we talked to your previous hosts about this, and I look at it like an Avengers Endgame kind of time travel thing in which her physically coming back in time has already altered the time and split it off into something different, because there's just some weird continuity things before she even arrives that don't make sense with if you watch season 1, which, you know, time travel stuff is always difficult. It always infuriates my brain because time travel stuff is very hard to do. So that was something where, that's how I look at the time travel of this. Rocky, how did you feel about going back to the mirror universe, and how do you view this experience? Because Guardian of Forever's abilities have been very all over the board. Like in the animated series, it's very different to the original series, and then there's books and stuff that say it's different. How did you feel coming back to this universe, and how do you think it all works? Do you think this is direct time travel? Do you think this is Avengers Endgame kind of thing where each decision she makes splinters off a new little thing? What do you think?
Yeah, that was something I completely didn't even think about when I saw this originally. I was like, oh, well, yeah, this doesn't really change the way the universe happened after the fact, because this is just a thing that happened in the, you know, the Guardians mirror unit. This wasn't real, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. The stuff that happened with the Guardian of Forever back in the original series did actually change history. And then, in fact, that you even pointed out is like, I'm kind of hanging out low because I don't want people to be using me to change history because of the temporal wars and all that. So yeah, it did feel like there was some incontinuity in there.
Yeah.
But as far as Giorgio and going through her mirror side of things, again, I felt it was a little strange because she was a changed woman. Because she did not react the same way. She did react still thinking she could rule the universe and do it her way, the way she wants it to work, completely oblivious of all the other things that are happening, and not realizing what she was doing was completely out of character with what was going on, you know, mirror universe style versus the one she's been getting used to in Discovery's universe.
Yeah, when I first watched it, I took it for granted. I kind of threw my hands up in the air and said, oh, well, they say she's learned something, but she hasn't fucking learned anything because she still tried to just do it brute force, violent style, and then they say you did a good job.
Way too quick, because she was, you know, putting Burnham through the agonizer. And I mean, yeah, they had some time lapse sequences going on, and
3 months.
They threw the food tray at her. Even if it was 3 months, they threw the food tray at her, and finally she eats the bread. She's eating the bread not because she's going to bow down to Giorgio, it's because she was ready to get out of the fucking agonizer. So she comes in and she said she even stuttered and didn't even look her in the eye when she said, "Yeah, I'm bowing down to you now." I did not trust it. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's cool.
She literally said, "You can trust me now."
You can throw her back in for another 3 months just to make sure, because
nothing says I'm trustworthy like saying you can trust me.
Exactly, and not even look you in the eye when they say it. I'm like, okay, throw her back in for another few times, because I don't quite get. Yeah, it's not. That's the mirror universe Giorgio, the one that we started with. That's what she would have done. She would have been like, yeah, I don't think so. You need to cook a little bit longer.
Where was her fidget spinner device from season 1 when she killed people with a magical fidget spinner? Remember that?
Oh, goodness, that was right. Oh, wow.
You remember that? Remember 2017? Remember that?
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is, I took for granted the first time around, but in this second watching, I really did appreciate it's not about her redemption via her saving or redeeming the evil Michael, but it's about the small things that she didn't have to do, thus the whole relationship with Saru. She didn't have to be nice to Saru. She didn't have to save the rest of his people. She didn't have to stop eating them. But those are things that are the gradual change and things she's adapted to, and that's what's being weighed more so than if she let Michael live or not, because at the end of the day, one of the little lines that did confuse me is like, it's like, well, I killed Michael, and he's like, nothing you could do, it was self-defense. I'm like, well, the first time she killed Michael was self-defense too, but I guess, whatever. Yeah. But like, that is what I took for granted on the first watch, because, I'm not a huge Giorgio fan. I just throw my hands up in the air and goes, she didn't learn anything. They said she did, but noticing it and actually giving it the fair shake. And obviously we're talking about it in a review format and analytical format. I have to look at this as fairly as possible. That was something that I did appreciate. And again, it ties back to, I just like her and Saru together, and it feels earned and paid off there. What about you, Heather? Obviously going back to the Mirror universe, were you a big fan of it in season 1, and how does it hold up to go all the way back to it in season 3?
I love season 3. I think the seasons got better as they moved along. Season 1 was not my favorite, and honestly, season 1 was not my favorite because of Lorca. I hate Lorca. Lorca pisses me off. I'm so glad they got rid of him. So that's how I feel about season 1 versus season 3.
Yeah, season 1 offends me more in terms of my own moral stuff. I've talked about this on the pod lots of times. There's just some choices that they made there. Obviously, the bury your gays thing is... I still can't believe they did that. I still can't believe that they did that in 2017 on the Star Trek show and all that. But one of the things that is interesting is to go back to the Mirror universe. There was some things that I took for granted in season 1. Like, I was really looking at their costumes this time round. And I really liked Michael's costume in this episode. I can't remember if it was the exact same replicated from season 1, but I really liked that it was a very, to me, a subtle inverse of the Discovery outfit, like with the things on the ribs and all of that.
I was noticing that too.
I took it for granted the first time around, and on the first viewing of this episode, so I was noticing those little touches. It was nice.
Details that they paid attention to, which made it even more annoying that they didn't pay attention to the details in the theme song montage.
Yeah, you know, but hey, the costume people, they're really good with the details of these things sometimes. A little bit too much. Sometimes they're a little bit too over-designed, where you go, that torchbearer outfit from season 1 got worked on for like nearly a year, and you saw it for 2 seconds on screen. Poor guy. It
looked really good in person, though.
Yeah,
if you see it in the conventions going on tour, that looked really cool in person.
Too bad the show only shot it for 2 seconds. Poor guy, he put so much effort in. But like, Rocky, one of the things I wanted to ask you guys about, being bigger fans of Giorgio and bigger fans of the Mirror universe and this type of stuff, is when it all comes down to the final moments of like her relationship with the evil version of Michael, and how she does have to kill her and she gets weighed at the end. How did you feel about Giorgio having to leave the show?
I felt they missed out on something. I felt that a Saru and Giorgio Mirror Universe would have been something interesting to see. That could have been very... I mean, I know they had to take her and put her back in for Section 31. That's going to be very interesting to see how that turns out, because that should be frigging amazing. But yeah, it was really... it's a misfit. This Giorgio doesn't fit in the Mirror Universe anymore. She doesn't fit. She's doing these things with the Kelpian. She's making these decisions. She's not being ruthless as a emperor of the Empire. Long live the Empire should be. So she wasn't fitting. I mean, and she spared the Burnham. And I was like, are you insane? And now you're going to try to rehabilitate her? And then you take her at her word that she trusts you now? That was nuts. There's no rhyme or reason to that. Whatever universe you come into, that didn't make any sense to me. So yeah, I think it was more about being weighed by the Guardian. I mean, do you fit in that unit? Because you don't quite fit in this universe just right. Do you fit in that universe? And she really was falling out of that fit. She really, she thought maybe she could turn it around and be successful and rule the galaxy with Burnham forever. And that was not happening. She could not retrain Burnham.
I killed my daughter again.
But in fairness, your hands were tied.
The end was the same.
But you tried.
I failed. Her. The Empire.
Yeah.
You're a big fan of this of Giorgio and her redemption arc. If they do get around to this Section 31 show and they team her up with Ash Tyler, like, is that the best thing, do you think, for her character to go back to what she was doing in season 2?
Ash Tyler just totally brings it down. If Giorgio was alone, it would be a completely different answer. But after you told me about Ash Tyler, I just can't look at it.
He's the head of Section 31, again. So he would be her boss.
I honestly am worried about the Section 31 show just a little bit. Not because of Ash Tyler or because of Giorgio. I'm worried about Section 31 because every time they make an appearance in the shows, they're messing stuff up all the time. And they're just doing it with reckless abandon everywhere. So I'm a little bit concerned about what they're going to do in the universe. But I'm interested to see what happens, though.
I'm just worried, like, although I'm not a fan of Georgiou, where they've ended her here, I worry that throwing her back into that espionage Section 31 world is just going to muck up what kind of redemption arc you got for her here. We're just going to I worry that they're just going to throw her back to where she was in season 2, and the idea that Ash Tyler is the head of Section 31, and it'll be a flip of what they were in season 2, where he was her underling, and it's just like, I don't know, like, I don't know if I would want to see her character again, honestly, but like if I did, I don't know if throwing her into the morally grey, dark, gritty, throwy, angry world of Section 31 would benefit her character, considering that she's been shedding away from that, just to throw her back in that world again. I wonder if it's just going to be,
Isn't life a roller coaster, though? I mean, it's never straight up, it's never straight down. You always have ups and downs, so isn't that part of, the growth dynamic?
Yeah, but sometimes, in your narrative, you want to see your characters go, sometimes you want to see them succeed in a certain way, but then that's the point of narratives. They like to subvert expectations.
You're worried that they're putting her character in reverse?
Yeah, I don't want her to take a step back.
You're okay with the roller coaster doing a loop-de-loop, and
I just don't want it to go backwards.
But you don't want it to go backwards, and that's kind of... You're not sure on which track they are on.
That's fun too, though, when they throw it backwards through the loop.
Yeah.
Especially when you're not expecting it. That's like,
Loop-de-loops are fun.
I don't want a character regression. Even with characters I don't like, I don't want them to regress. And that's what annoyed me about Ash Tyler in season 2. End of season 1, it seemed like he was going to go places better than what he did, and then he just regressed again. And it was like, well, I don't want to spend time with you. And so I worry about Georgiou's characterization.
Can we all agree that Ash Tyler sucks and we don't want to see him again?
Yes. Definitely, yes.
I feel bad because I feel bad he's a good actor, but...
Again, you're separating the actors from the characters.
I know.
You can have a great actor, but have a super annoying character.
But it makes it more upsetting, right, though, when you know that the person can act and the script is giving them a character that you can't act through. It just makes it hard, like I know this guy can act, but they're just giving him a character that can only play one note from an acting perspective, which is mopey.
I tried to shut her out when Rel spoke the call. I resisted by thinking of you, the one I want to be human for. And I love.
Guardian of Forever, Rachel. Did you guess that was going to be it?
On the first watch?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I knew that it was going to be some kind of reference, but I don't think I bothered to give it enough thought to actually consider what it was going to be.
Yeah.
I was like, they're pointing us out too much for it not to be a reference.
Yeah, and I'm used to them referencing. I knew, because of the newspaper, many people picked up on the newspaper. I'm like, hey, I know that. That's a reference to a thing I know in a show that I've watched before. Weirdly, I was fine with it being the Guardian of Forever. I'm not a huge lover of, hey, reference, and that pushes things over the line. References don't win me over as easily as other people. Like, it has to be really, and I thought it was fine. I was actually a bit more, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the Guardian of Forever having like a human persona avatar figure, because I really liked him just being a sci-fi animated
just
object.
Just a big rock.
Yeah.
Just a big rock portal. Yeah. It's kind of weird having it as a guy walking around.
But it also...
With a cigar.
It makes sense for what they're saying about him having to go into hiding because of the temporal wars.
Yeah, but...
Sorry.
And I like the performance of Carl.
Yeah,
I've always liked that
like
guy. I've liked him since CSI.
Too.
So he was great. I thought he was wonderful. The Guardian of Forever, people got enraged about it. People loved it. I was indifferent. I was like, okay, cool. Like, it's just a thing that, it's here. It's not ruining the continuity of him because he's been, not coherent throughout the whole entire run of Star Trek. He's changed and grown over time. Obviously, you guys said at the beginning you guys were thrilled and hyped about it being the Guardian of Forever. What about that?
What about it? What we thought, or
what about it made you so feel so great that it's the Guardian of Forever? Because What does that matter to Discovery?
I am the guardian of forever, ever, 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 ever.
Yeah.
The dramatic
Chills,
reading of
man.
that line.
Chills.
That
Was
was pretty weird to have it morph into the original line. That was kind of strange, but it was still cool. I mean, I as a Star Trek geek growing up with Star Trek, recognizing the Guardian of Forever was an amazing moment in this episode. The only thing I have regrets about is we speculated about this because it was a two-parter. And Patrick, I think it was Patrick that mentioned that they saw the newspaper thing and he kind of thought it was going to be the Guardian of Forever. And everyone else was, we were all saying it's a Q, right? He's a Q.
Yeah.
And he very well may still be a Q. But,
well, technically, we weren't wrong, remember? Because
they wanted it to
if
be
anyone.
Q.
No, it's not want. The Guardians of Forever are a de-evolved version of the Q continuum. So it is the Q, it's just a de-evolved version of the Q. The Guardians of the Forever eventually evolve into being the Q.
Which is interesting. I remember
that's
the
one of the
writers...
books, right?
I did Memory Alpha on that one.
Oh, okay.
I remember the writers
yes, it was
talking
the
about
book.
how they wanted it to be a Q originally, but then they thought, let's leave the Q for Picard because it makes more sense in that universe, which I agree. I think if you're going to introduce the Q, you do it in Picard. You know, it makes sense there. While this, it makes sense because Discovery has always been hearkening back to the original series. Why ask why it makes you feel great and overjoyed is, does it work on its own, or is it something where it's like you have to just know Star Trek? Because that's the thing about Discovery I question a lot is this a show for people who don't know Star Trek and this is their Star Trek show?
It's the callback. When they overlaid the Guardian of Forever, that was the old Guardian of Forever. They actually took the audio clip from the very, very first Guardian of Forever and overlaid that on his voice. So you get the reminiscence, you get the callback. That is what causes the goosebumps and the chills and that kind of thing, because you remember that and they brought it back and then you get the chills. So you get that emotional reaction.
Yeah. But is it a good... Here's the thing with references, though. Is it a good reference because only us old school Trek fans get it, or does it work on its own? Like, if you don't know who the Guardian of Forever is, what does this matter to you?
Why are you watching Discovery?
Dude,
you need to start...
You gotta stay. Yeah, no. If you're one of our friends and you've seen the show for the first time, you're like, "That was cool," but what the hell's the Guardian Forever? And like, oh, hold on, we gotta watch this original episode because this is very important.
I got a list of episodes for you to watch.
Yeah, that's a great question that you brought up,
The
Heather.
callback thing it's a very good question because science fiction wise, when you started watching Discovery, and a lot of Trekkies came out and said, "Okay, what the fuck is with the Klingons? What's with all the violence? What is going on? Is this Star Trek? This isn't Star. It's not my Star Trek." And
this doesn't make sense timeline wise.
But at the same time, I'm looking at it going, "Okay, but." It's really good sci-fi. Is it the same Star Trek I grew up with? No, not yet. But is it really good sci-fi? Yeah, it's fucking good sci-fi. It looks great. It's fun to watch. The sound effects are cool. The characters are kind of cool. I'm enjoying this. So I'm going to keep watching. And they get these little tiebacks, and they're trying to make sure that, yes, it is Star Trek. We have the Guardian of Forever. It's Star Trek. The Mirror Universe. This is pure Star Trek. Star Trek invented the Mirror Universe, right?
Make it Star Trek.
Yeah.
Are the
no, I don't think
references
so.
enough, or should there be more thematic links?
No, the themes of Star Trek is what makes Star Trek Star Trek. When they had that episode where they're doing like the courtroom thing about the Vulcans.
Yep, Unification 3.
Yeah, that one was Star Trek. That's pure Star Trek.
Yeah.
When you watch an episode, we watched an episode of Enterprise where it had Phlox writing to his pen pal human doctor on his doing an internship or whatever. That was pure Star Trek, the way they did it. It's not about the phasers all the time. It's not about warp speed.
It's not about
the people and what they're doing.
So Heather brought up a point earlier of why are you watching Discovery if you're not into Star Trek and whatever. Like, that's my thing. Is Star Trek Discovery a show for people who only know Star Trek or for people who don't? Because when moments do like this do come up, or Unification 3, for instance, my high school friend never watched a Star Trek in his life. He watched Discovery and thought it was really great. Those first 2 seasons filled him in on the references because they would fill you in a bit more. He was completely lost with season 3 because he said to me, "What's Unification? Who are the Romulans? Why should I care? Who's the Guardian of Forever?" That's where I question Discovery. Is this a show for everyone or only certain people?
It's the same with the other Star Trek series, too. Lower Decks, it's not something for people who have never watched Star Trek before.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, Lower Decks, you have to have watched Star Trek before. Picard, you have had to have watched Star Trek before. Enterprise,
those are much more clear, but I feel like Discovery is more inconsistent with where it's aiming.
Yeah. Well, it feels like sometimes, or for instance, if this is for Star Trek fans, say it's not for newbies, there's just some things that we've heard it, we've all heard it, we've even had some of our own in this discussion. There's certain continuity things and certain tonal things that feel inconsistent with the Star Treks that we've had in the past. This doesn't line up, this doesn't feel like this doesn't work like this, we could go on and on and on. And if it is for Star Trek fans, purely, then wouldn't it be more catered towards that audience like something like Lower Decks does, where Lower Decks goes back to the A and B storylines and so on and so forth, while Discovery, to me, it felt like this is supposed to be like a gateway like TNG was in the 90s, where it's like, yeah, you can see the original series, but TNG works on its own. You can just enjoy this on its own. Like not every episode is referring back to the original series or the movies. And that is why I am like questioning, because we've had other guests on who say the exact opposite. They say, oh, I think this is a show that's supposed to be for new people to enjoy, and if you don't get the references, it's fine because they go quickly by. But with the Guardian of Forever, and they do the old voice, imagine watching this and you don't know what that is.
They'd be like, whoa, what happened? That was weird.
Why did they went a bit overboard with that effect.
I can't not talk about it anymore. The Guardian of Forever! The Guardian of Forever! The freaking Guardian of Forever on Star Trek Discovery! I literally jumped up off my couch when that was revealed. How unbelievably cool was that?
Let's talk about Hugh Culber, Rachel. Dr. Hugh Culber was in this episode. We got to see the Mirror Universe version of him.
Time.
We got to see him fuck shit up royally and get fucked up by Saru. We got to see him get thrown into the ceiling.
We got to see him evilly smirk instead of smile and nod.
Do you think with him being introduced as in this season that it just makes the absence of him from the first season even more weird?
Yes.
Like, it's a weird choice when you look back at it, right? Where they thought, let's not have him there. And yet this season's like, nah, fuck that decision. That was stupid. Don't you want to see Wilson Cruz with mascara on? Yes. Yes, I do.
You just said mascara really weird.
Screw you.
I understood what he said.
What did you think of Wilson Cruz's characterization of an evil Dr. Hugh Culber? Rachel?
I thought it was good. I thought it was fine. It was the general menacing evilness, smirkiness that you expect from a Mirror Universe person in Star Trek.
Yeah, I know Heather will cringe at me saying this. I said it last episode. I can definitely feel that Wilson Cruz picked up some energy from when he was working with Jason Isaacs, because he really did feel like he was honing in on the kind of evil campiness that Jason Isaacs was doing in the first season, more so than the campiness of someone like, in the 90s with the Mirror Universe and DS9 or the 60s. I feel like he played it a little less overtly campy than every other person in this episode, and it was nice to see that because Wilson Cruz and Jason Isaacs had great chemistry when they did work in season 1, so it's nice to see, like, it feels like he's picked up that kind of energy that Jason was putting down, and it kind of makes the universe feel more consistent with itself. Like, it doesn't just feel like only Jason Isaacs was that type of goofy evil in the Mirror Universe. It feels like, well, there are other characters and other actors who are picking up that baton as well. It gives it a richer feel. Rocky Culber, are you a big fan of him? And how did you like an evil, mad scientist version of this guy?
Okay, I'm a big fan of Culber. He's grown on me so much over the series. It was weird that they killed him for a while, and then it was weird that he brought him back and he wasn't feeling it quite right. And it's nice to see him starting to feel it as he seems to be part of the crew and really into it now, especially when they come into the next couple episodes. He really comes into it. But so I love, and Wilson Cruz, my God, that man got charisma like crazy. and dude's more fit than I can even imagine me ever being, for sure. But he's not a bad looking dude, and I'm a straight man.
He's charismatic as hell. Like,
yes.
It makes you angry that the first two seasons didn't play up to that strength.
Absolutely.
I agree 112% right there, because after seeing him in person at the conventions from seat, what is it, double A or whatever section we were sitting in way back in the middle of the room, you could feel his charisma all the way on the stage, and he's not more than an inch tall from where you're sitting. But he just floats charisma all over the place. He's a nice guy.
He commands the screen when he's on it, and it makes it so weird that in the first two seasons, he was just a background guy. Where you go, wait, what? Season 3 really elevated him, and it was nice to see him do it the exact same way in the Mirror universe. I think, like, he really stood out as the evil counterpart. Not just, I mean, the uniform helps, right?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Now, Mirror Universe, doctors are not something you want to be dealing with in the universe whatsoever. They're worse than dentists are, okay? And dentists are no good in the Mirror Universe either, okay? The thing about a doctor in the Mirror Universe is they're there to patch you up. They're there to keep you going. They're there to keep you going because you just got killed a couple times in the agonizer. They're there to boost you back in and jumpstart you.
They're there to force feed you so that way you don't die.
They're there to force feed you so you don't die. They are there to prolong your pain.
Or
they're not there to help you
well.
with your pain. They can kill you in a zillion ways, and they can tell you how to do it quickly. Chances are they're not going to do it quickly, okay? You don't want to deal with the doctor in the Mirror Universe. So yeah, he was pure wonderful evil in the Mirror Universe, totally. I agree with that all the way.
Wilson Cruz's performance alone gives you the understanding of why Giorgio was afraid and not willing to seek medical help throughout the season. Just his performance said it. And again, it highlights how frustrating it was that they just put Wilson Cruz on the back burner for nearly 3 whole seasons. And it's like, it makes it so rewarding in a way where it's like, oh, okay, see, they don't need to give us an expo dump about his doctor character. I don't need to know much about him. I just see Wilson Cruz on the screen being menacing, and I completely buy the storyline earlier in the season of her being kind of wary of seeking medical treatment, because when I was initially watching it, I'm going, okay, they're just doing this to prolong the drama because we've got to reach 13 episodes. But when you actually see Wilson Cruz lurking around in the Mirrorverse, you go, okay, I get it now.
There are actors in Star Trek Discovery that are so phenomenal, and sometimes they're barely used, but they're very good actors.
Oh, yeah. Heather, what are your thoughts on Hugh Culber as a character, and what do you think of his Mirror counterpart?
I love the character. I think he's a great character. Same. I wish they would have more of him. Looking forward to getting to know him better in the future seasons. And his Mirror Universe character was evil.
Yeah. I wish that we got to see what him and Stamets were a bit like more so before Stamets got stabbed. We didn't get to see them hang out as much as I would have liked. I would have liked
probably more whips and chains, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Bondage.
They actually have sex. That would be the big twist, because
it's what do you call it? S&M.
Yeah. So Rachel, what would you rate this? Would you give this a yum being bad or yum yum being good?
A yum.
Not a fan.
Nah.
This is bad.
Yeah, I know. But I'm in a similar boat to you, where I don't think the redemption doesn't work for me. And even though I do understand that she's been changed and shifted through her experiences on Discovery, I would have liked to see those breadcrumbs rather than know that there's this gradual thing, but to see specific events or small interactions that show that she's not the same person that she was when she arrived.
Yeah.
And like I pointed out at the start, I didn't feel the stakes of this episode because I knew CBS's plans for the
kick
character.
her out of the show. Yeah, that does tarnish some things when you do watch these shows and you know a little bit too much about the production side of things, where it's like, well, obviously they got to get rid of Giorgio because she has this show. Like, it does take a little bit of the mystique out of viewing a show. Like, you know, when I'm watching some shows, I don't know any of that, so I'm just enjoying the ride. But that is the unfortunate nature of being on the social media and following these things and talking about it in a Star Trek Discovery rewatch capacity.
It's the same thing that people experienced with the Marvel films of being like, well,
this actor's contract is up, so they're going to have to leave in this movie. Yeah, it takes a little bit of the zhuzh out of it. You know what, Rachel? I'm going to be, you know, I started out very negative, although Heather and Rocky didn't convince me that George Joe's this wonderful character. I'm actually going to give this episode a yum yum.
Yum yum.
This is the benefits of actually discussing an episode, not just watching it and then going, that's it. Actually sitting down, discussing it, breaking down what the story was trying to say, the structure of it, this beat, and having people like Starfleet Underground on who like the show far more than we do and give us something to bounce off of and actually get a different point of view. I walked in thinking, oh, I'm just going to hate this and I'm going to say yum and I'm going to be arguing with our Starfleet Underground friends about the episode because I really didn't like it. But actually sitting down, talking about it, like actually talking about it and reflecting upon things, I'm happily, but also in a very surprised manner, going to give this a yum yum. I don't believe in the redemption arc, which is the big thrust of it, but I did enjoy myself watching it a bit, and I enjoyed actually talking about it and seeing what they were trying to do with it.
I'm glad for you, baby.
I'm glad for me too. Rocky, where do you fall? Yum or yum yum?
Oh, I'm a yum yum.
Yum yum.
But I'm a yum yum most of the time for Star Trek. But so you got that about me. But it's really interesting. You're right, discussing these episodes like this and to hear the different viewpoints. And I can see where people, you know, of course, if you go on the internet, read comments. One, you'd never read the comments. And two, if you're looking on the internet, don't look at those things because, yeah, if you should be looking at porn because that's much more entertaining. I don't know where that joke was going.
Less gratuitous.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so, but the ideas of looking at Star Trek critically and not just being a fanboy, but looking at it critically, I can see where some of the things are coming from, and I agree with some of them. I really do think there was a lot of bloodshed in this mirror universe. They must go through crew members like crazy with this much kind of bloodshed in this mirror universe. In fact, it's surprising that some of them are still alive by the time they get here. Just the amount of bloodshed they had. And I thought, you know, it would have been, you could sit there and go, it would have been a little bit more interesting if they did this or if they did that. And as a fan, you can go write some fan fiction up and it'll be a lot more interesting. And, oh gosh, now you're looking at the porn again. Shame on you. Stop looking at the internet. Because it goes, you know, one click from fan fiction to, you know, if you read enough of it, there's a lot of that in there. I don't read a lot of it, but I've read some. Anyway, I've done research. But yeah, no, I'm yum yum all this. I really enjoyed it, and I continue to enjoy Discovery. And while I am sad that we there's no way to get Landry back in the show, I just I don't know what I'm going to do about that. There are just things you can't get around, and I have a complete disagreement with the producers of Star Trek because of this. However, still watch the show and still pretty much fanboy. So yum yum.
Yeah. Heather, yum or yum yum?
I give this episode 2 yums up.
Yum yum.
So I think it's an awesome episode. I loved it. It's one of my favorites. I love how they made this a prequel / pilot for Section 31, and I'm really looking forward to that spinoff when they finally get to it. And the fact that they brought the Guardian of Forever in, I freaking love this episode.
I will ask the harsh question. If, say for some reason, the Section 31 show never comes to be, how will this episode feel
Blasphemy. Blasphemy. I will not hear any of that blasphemy.
There's a lot of money they'd be missing out on if they did that. I'm just saying.
Exactly. Capitalism
pocketbooks should be lined. Yeah, no, that's going to be there.
Capitalism will make it happen.
Guys, your American is showing.
Oh, sorry. Let me zip this back up.
Zip it back up. But what do you think? What do you think? Say for some reason it never comes to fruition, like that 4th Star Trek movie still hasn't. How will this episode stand? Like, will it just work? Will it still work, or will it feel like a weird oddity of like a backdoor pilot?
Because it it ends her story in Discovery so she could start a new story. So they ended it.
I agree.
It's not like there was a cliffhanger or anything. It's not like it was like, whatever happened to it's like you got a definitive ending with the story, with the character arc and everything.
But there are enough threads that they can pull at to...
Yeah, it's not like Terra Elysium where the third season said, oh, fuck Terra Elysium, we're not going to deal with that, and that feels way more like weird when you watch New Eden again and you're like, wait, I thought this was going to be way more important than it actually is. Oh well, I guess it doesn't matter.
Did you ever make it to Terra Elysium? Landed right back on East South 4. Wasn't pretty.
Heather, could you please inform us what Rachel and I will be watching next episode on Star Trek Discovery?
Sure. So next episode is Sukal. Discovery ventures to the Verubulin Nebula, where Burnham, Saru, and Culber make a shocking realization about the origins of the burn, as the rest of the crew faces an unexpected threat.
I like we focus so heavily on Giorgio. I didn't even mention that Saru got his grilled from the Admiral, and there was actual other characters in this episode because that's
that whole fourth act, yeah.
Yeah,
it happened. It was fine.
We briefly mentioned, but we didn't mention Book being like, well, if I'm not Starfleet, I can act more like the Emerald Chain, which is something that you
Book was
want.
awesome.
He
Book
did the thing that season 3 did a lot of, which is he solved a crisis off screen and then told us that he did it. And I'm like, good job.
Like, hey, I have this thing. It solves all of our problems.
It's not just that, it's the way he said it, because he's like, okay, I read the field manual, and then it got really, really interesting. So then I went to the technical manual, and then I had to see how it ended. So then I had to go to the advanced technical manual, and he was
I had to read the Wikipedia page.
And then I had to read the dictionary because some of that stuff I did not understand.
And then I looked at the fan fiction and oh my God.
I loved Book's outfit because it's one of those ones where, remember in season 2 when Dr. Culber was just in a normal suit jacket and shirt talking to the Admiral, and it feels like, oh, they just wore their normal outfits. They're not wearing sci-fi outfits. I love Book's one where it's just like a normal little jumper with the buttons near the neck for no reason. I love it. It's just like...
It gently evokes the clothes that they wore when they went to his home planet.
Yeah, but not... I like when Star Trek Discovery does fashion without it being too, it's a sci-fi world where we got tinfoil on our titties, like in the original series.
Again, the costume department on Discovery does a really good job.
Yeah.
Oh, they rock. They rock. And they're winning awards for it, too. So you cannot fault the costume department on Discovery.
No qualms with them from me.
So, Starfleet Underground, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, StarfleetUnderground.com is a pretty good place to look. Because we're on the website, and that's where everywhere, and just StarfleetUnderground.com. It's easy enough to remember. Starfleet Under G is on Twitter because Twitter only allowed so many characters in a name. So Starfleet Under G on Twitter, and I believe Starfleet Under G on Instagram, or is it Underground on that one? But just look for StarfleetUnderground.com and go from there. All the links are in there someplace, and it's so much fun to find them. And of course, we could plug our Patreon, but this is your show.
Oh, well, Nathan did it last week, so he set the precedent.
Oh, okay.
So you might as well tell us about the photos and all the fun stuff you got on there, because I love hearing the pitch of your Patreon. It's really fun.
It's really, really cool, and I have to give applause to Heather because she, I think, came up with most of it. Starfleet or Patreon.com/Starfleet Underground. So that should be pretty easy to find too. But yeah, we're on a mission to save as many tribbles as we can because they definitely need to be neutered because the tribble population problem is serious.
Yeah, we always feed our tribble, so we figured we had to spade and neuter them. Otherwise, it would be like the short trek, and that would not be good. So, but we have a whole bunch of different rewards. We have After Dark, where you could see the crewmen naked, which is pretty fun. We have postcards from the Tribbles. We have our Starfleet Underground scrapbook, and even our number one, Patrick, he'll make you a hat, a Star Trek knitted hat and everything for one of the
That's the expensive
tiers.
one. That's the expensive one, but it's pretty worth it because not too many people have gone for that one yet.
It's got the love in it, though. That's the thing.
Very much so.
We even have a Playboy Tribble magazine. So if you want to see Playboy
artfully
tribbles.
done. The very tasteful pictures of
Remember,
tribbles.
not for kids, people. Not for kids.
Yes, not for kids.
I would also, I don't know if you want to mention this, but I know, Heather, you have the YouTube. That's where I found you guys. I was looking up Star Trek podcasts on YouTube while I was editing old episodes of ours, and I found you guys on there first before finding you guys on Twitter and all of that. So you guys also upload your stuff to the YouTube, and then I found you on the social medias, and you were like... And we interacted there, and it was really fun. So it's been, and yes, people, we've been on Starfleet Underground in the past. We did an episode of Enterprise with them. It was Breaking the Ice, Vulcan episode. So if you want to hear us on their show, that was one that you can check out. But yeah, check out their stuff. Like they said, they covered all of the modern Star Trek shows that are on. You guys give some interesting pieces of information and trivia and breaking news of Star Trek each week as well. And you've got, and you're covering Enterprise. Give them a listen, give them a go. They're really great. We'll include all the links of this stuff in the description of this episode. You can find us on all those social medias too: Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Twitter, YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast. We're always posting stuff on there, always having engagement, always chatting. I always, every time Starfleet Underground posts a little video, and if it relates to siblings, I'll remind them Kern does exist. So even if he doesn't remember. So yeah, you can find us on there. We have our Patreon as well, where it's YumYumPod on the Patreon. Rachel, what do we do on our Patreon?
We discuss even more Star Trek in form of the movies and also the lowest and highest rated episodes of each series according to IMDb. And then we also talk about other things, which is our general thoughts on.
Yes, we give our thoughts on other shows like Sense8 or Doctor Who or Babylon 5.
Video games as
well. So that is where we are at. Again, all of this is in the description. Thank you guys, Rocky and Heather. It was so great to have you on. I knew that Heather being a big fan of Giorgio, we're going to lock horns on things, but I still think that we managed to come through and have a decent discussion about it without it just being like, how dare you, and get into a Giorgio fight sequence with one another. Where
She hasn't tried to kill you yet, so
I
that's
hope
good.
I'm still allowed on your ship.
We always can do mud wrestling too. That's another way to do the differences. So when we get angry, we could go in the holodeck and do the mud wrestling.
Rachel, before I do the mud wrestling, will you put the petroleum jelly on me so that I'm ready to go?
Isn't that cheating? I think that's cheating.
Ryan, you know it.
Okay, I won't cheat then. I'll play fair. Well,
you should actually, because Heather has all the cheat codes to the holodeck.
There you go. Well, a pleasure talking, everyone. We'll be back next episode to talk some more Star Trek Discovery. Rachel, you're my yum-yum.